Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'd like to present to you tonight our strategy presentation. First, we start out with the goals that you, the council, set forth for us to follow. And each of those 4 goals are we taking into consideration with everything that we're going to do, that we're asking for in the budget. We also wanted to take a look at and incorporate the feedback from the citizens and the citizen customer service survey. And we had 3 items ended up in the bottom right-hand quadrant, things that needed improvement, that were important and that we could do better on. So I want to incorporate those and how quickly we respond to emergencies, the city's effort to prevent crime, and the visibility of police in neighborhoods. I want to start with response times. So this is for 2019 year to date. Priority 1 and Priority 2 are calls that are in progress. Priority 1 are emergency calls, shootings, stabbings, a robbery in progress, something like that, where there's a potential for violence or life's in danger. An accident where somebody's trapped, those are examples of Priority 1 calls. Priority 2 calls are calls where there's a potential, a family violence call where somebody, there's violence occurring. Those are Priority 2. For Priority 1 and Priority 2, our goal from the time a call is received and dispatched to the time an officer arrives is 8 minutes, and we're meeting that goal right now. Priority 3s are calls that are important, but they're not. There's not a life or a crime occurring at the time. A life is at risk. For example, just an argument between 2 people, or a suspicious person call, or something like that. We want to get there, but doesn't quite reach the level of the others. And our goal, we try to get there by 12 minutes for those. The 4, 5, and 6 are kind of lumped together. Those are delayed calls. Those are calls that have already occurred. The person's not there. There's no risk to the public. And Priority 9 are our phone calls where we take reports over the phone, our expediter. So we are meeting our goals for our most critical calls, and even our Priority 3 calls. The bulk of our calls are Priority 3s, and we still meet the goals there. So I think we're doing well, obviously, based on what the citizens gave in their feedback. We need to do a better job of either marketing that or reaching out to those folks with the times that we do. These are average times, so there are some times where we don't meet those goals, obviously. That's what an average is. There'll be some above that and some below it. So we need to work on that. Crime report. Here, this is broken down. The blue is property crime, which is 90% of all reported crime in the city. And the gray there, the silver looking, that's the violent crime. And since 2016, when I came on board, we've had a steady decrease. Last year, 17 to 18, 18 compared to 17 was a slight decrease, but a decrease nonetheless. It didn't go up. So we're proud of that. We're going to push to keep that trend going. The biggest challenge we had last year was robberies in our city, and so far this year we're down 14% year to date compared to robberies last year. We just had we had 5 murders so far this year. Last year we had 7 total. We had an incident where an adult son, a 40-year-old son, assaulted his father back in March, and his father had been in a coma, and after this report was prepared, Friday we find out that he passed away, so that'll be classified as a homicide. That'll go down as our 6th homicide. 2 of the other homicides were babies were beaten to death by their caregivers. So 3 of those are family or acquaintance homicides. The other 3 are more traditional criminal, episodes, if you call it that. The number one crime that drives our property crime is still BMVs. They still equate to about 20%. 1 out of every 5 crimes burglary of a motor vehicle. This is one of the things that I found surprising, going back to the strategy part of the customer service, where they talked about the city's participation in, I'll just go back there real quick. City's participation to prevent crime, city's effort to prevent crime. We've had 2 very, very, I believe, well-produced and well-executed crime prevention efforts. Partnering with the city's communication staff, they produced some PSAs. We put them on our Facebook page. We had some videos, lots of signage for the lock, take, and hide, for example. We did see a corresponding decrease in our burglary of motor vehicles. It is still, however, our most often reported crime, and it still varies between 40 to 60% of those vehicles month in and month out are unlocked vehicles. So we've made some headway, obviously, because the property crimes, they're down overall, but there's still things. But we have that, and then we have the, when I got here in 2016, we had 17 people die in motor vehicle fatalities in the city. Most of those were on the highway, 12 of those were on the highway, and 5 in the city streets. So far this year, we've only had 4. And we had the Drive Like Your Family Lives Here campaign, another campaign. There were stickers put out. And you, the council members, I've seen as we go out to some of your meetings, the community meetings, you pass out that information. Again, the communication staff for the city did a great job of publicizing that, getting signs out. I believe that in our targeted enforcement has led to the reduction. We focused on speed enforcement, seatbelt enforcement, and impaired driving enforcement. Last year, we arrested a record number of DWIs in the city of Mesquite. So, but I just, with that number there, property crime still kind of pretty consistent from 17 to 18. We're trending below that this year, slightly, about 100 offenses overall. So I just wanted to let you know, and I just think maybe we need to do a better job of marketing. If we go back to the Citizens Customer Satisfaction Survey, we talked about the city's efforts to prevent crime. I think we've been very, very successful as a team working with you all and our city staff to get the word out there. And our CPA has done a great job. They've been a great help to us out there. So I think maybe we just need to work a little harder at getting the message out. Culture and system of community policing. This is always a struggle. There's a lot of things we do there. The Santa Cops, the Explorer program, expansion of MPD Explorer programs. Under Officer Roan and Officer Contreras' leadership, we have a record number of students. That Police Explorer program is for young people aged 14 to 20. And so high school all the way up to their first couple of years of college. For young folks that are interested in a career in law enforcement, they get to do community service projects. They go out on the Address a Mesquite Day with us. They do other community service projects. They work with the CPA in doing some of the Fatal Vision and some of the things they do that they put on. And so I want to see more of those young folks come into the ranks of police officers, law enforcement later on. But if nothing else, it helps them to be good citizens. I want them to learn leadership and civic duty during that program. They're doing great. Last year, we served a record number of families in Santa Clara, number of children. Over 1,000 children were serviced through that program. When it comes to the culture of community policing, this is one of the struggles that agencies have across the country, is we tend to focus on a unit or a specialty group. Like we have a crime prevention unit with Officer Roan and Officer Contreras, and they do a tremendous job with our CPA volunteers, our alumni association, and the work that they do. But to be successful in community policing, it has to permeate the organization. Everybody has to be on board, and so we've done I made a commitment during the time I've been here since 2016 to, when we're going in the hiring processes, encourage people, make that our message, make that our focus through the academy. And so I think as we're going forward, we're seeing some of the fruits of that. Some of our younger officers are getting engaged in the community and things. We've had some of our veteran officers as well, but it's important that we develop a mindset of the whole organization as a community policing officer, that it's not just a specialized group, and that's what I'm working towards here. The academy in-service trainings, that's what we're emphasizing community policing as we go forward. The digital media and also all the other, the CSI, we're going to change that a little bit this coming school year. That's Choice for Stepping Individuals, a program we take to all 7th graders in MISD. The resources, again, we have the crime prevention unit, the neighborhood watch groups, next door, the CPA volunteers. Can't say enough about them. Our award-winning CPA, they were membership of the year last year at the state convention. And so one thing I want to highlight there, third from the bottom, internships, high school and college. We partnered with MISD this year, and we've had 12 MISD students come through the police department as interns and get to see the inner workings of the department, even our communication staff. We developed 2 tracks, the law enforcement track and our dispatch track, because we're going to see a little bit of staffing in the next staffing video of slide, why that's important. But we wanted to connect with the MISD students here to help to not just answer their questions or pique their interest in a career in law enforcement, but specifically to get them to consider the Mesquite Police Department in the city of Mesquite as potential employers later on in the future, to come back to their community and serve. I want to do a better job of recruiting folks from here. In our academy classes, we get people from all over, even other states and once even other country. But no one cares really about the community like the people who grow up here. And if we can do a better job of creating a pipeline from the high schools, from the community here into the police department, that's the goal of that. We currently have 5 college interns set for this summer. We do the college internships in the summer, high school internships during the school year. That's something I'm really proud of, that we're really connecting with the youth of this city and with the young people who are going to be the next generation in law enforcement and in communications, police communications, dispatch. Our technology, again, that's one of the directives you gave us when I first got here, the council gave, is use the technology to enhance public safety. We've been doing that. One of the biggest things is the GMRS radio system that we have, the Spillman. I believe because of Spillman, since 2016, or actually from 2017, when we implemented Spillman to today, we've shaved about a minute off our response times for priority 1 and priority 2 calls, and about a minute off priority 1s and about 30 seconds off priority 2s, because I think with the enhanced system, the officers have more information at their ready. They can see things they couldn't see before. They can see comments, they can see notes, call notes and things like that. So they have more information, and they can see when something needs to be answered. So I think that's helped us there. The video, WatchGuard video, we have not just the body cameras as a WatchGuard as our vendor, but our security cameras outside, we use those too. So it's our interview rooms are integrated. So everything from the dash cams to the body cams, the interview rooms are one vendor. So we don't have to worry about trying to integrate video or trying to capture something. It's all one system. The Vigilant license plate reader, we have the CPA scan vehicle that goes out, that they take out on a regular basis for us, just about every day. We have one of our police vehicles outfitted with that. We get 90%, more than 90% really, but I know I can tell you for sure 90% of the license plate information we gather comes from private sources. The Vigilant LPR system is a commercial system available to record drivers, and as they drive through apartment complexes looking for cars for parking violations in other areas, and they're recording data. And we have access to that data by having a license to use the system. We have I can't say enough about the IT support we get from Zach LaJoy and his staff. We have 2 folks just dedicated to our applications. And so we run last time I looked, about 37 separate database programs, applications, and we couldn't manage that without their help, and they do a great job of taking care of everything for us and keeping us going. Brief Cam, the last one from the bottom, second from the bottom there, is the last thing I want to talk about here. It's a program where you authorize us to use purchase with our seizure funds, and all this data information we're getting, somebody has it set through right now and sort through it all. Brief Cam is going to help us. We can say, find every red vehicle. It'll go through the video, cycle through, and it'll find all the red vehicles or all the white vehicles, all the white pickup trucks, or everybody wearing a hat or whatever. So it's going to make us much more efficient about sorting through those gigabytes or terabytes of video data that we have to help us narrow things down. Vacancies. Currently have 4 detention officer vacancies in our jail. That's a good thing, because 2 of those promoted to our academy. And so we have one of our dispatchers promoted to our academy. Now we need to work some dispatch. We just hired a young lady to start just last week. She just started. And so and we need to do some more work there. We have some other folks in the pipeline. We're spending a significant amount of overtime in dispatch to fill the capacity there. And a lot of that is coming on the officer side. That's something I'm well aware of, and I'm working on that. So I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I mean, I didn't want to cut you off. You were kind of answering the question. Is part of your budget ask going to be for a pay increase for the dispatchers? Because if we're having significant overtime and we have a significant, I mean, it just looks like 6 vacancies, would a good bump in pay help fill those 6 vacancies, and would there be offsetting cost savings from lack of overtime?
Well, just filling the vacancies will give us offsetting cost savings. And one of the things
Yes,
we're trying to do, yes, sir, to answer your question is, I don't know that the pay's the issue. Of course, everybody would like to get paid. It's pretty certainly not going to hurt anything. But we had 6 people just last week in the program that washed out because of their backgrounds. I don't know that a bump in pay is going to have somebody with a better background, applying. I don't know that. We have to screen them because they have access to a lot of information. And so when I look at it, the interview, I did a core process analysis of the whole system of how somebody applies and how they get through. Where we're losing them is in the board, the interview board. They fail a significant amount of people, and in the background investigation for drug use and things like that. And so, or character issues that develop, or we only find out once we get to question them and get to the polygraph. And so, and the polygraph was the last one. Those three, we lose the most of our candidates for that dispatch position in those three phases. And I don't know, to be quite honest with you, if more money is going to get people with better backgrounds to apply. I don't. I'm not trying to evade the answer. I just don't know.
I think you actually thoroughly answered it.
Okay.
Sometimes, I mean, as a lawyer, I was told that sometimes the answer should be, I don't know if you actually don't know. So that's okay. Could you, as part of this going forward on the budget, provide just like a 3 or 4 city comparable for their dispatchers so that we could at least see, you know, like, for example, Garland and Rockwall and Forney, just to see what our comparable cities in the area are paying for dispatch, to see if there's a significant disparity, please?
Yes, we've already done that, so we've already given us.
Part of our compensation presentation on the 19th will include our annual review of police, fire, and dispatchers.
July 19th?
Yes, sir.
Well, there you go.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
one of the things we're doing, just to answer one other part of your question about the overtime, we're training more of our non-sworn employees, some of our PSPs and our detention officers, any other non-sworn who can pass the critical. They've already passed the background, so we know we can trust them with information. If they can pass the typing test and the critical test, the other screening things, we're allowing them to be trained to work in dispatch, because even though we're paying them overtime, it's significantly less than what we're paying officers for overtime. Where officers generate $50 to $55 an hour in overtime, one of those folks at overtime would be $20 an hour. We're looking at hiring more part-time personnel as well to offset some of that cost. I don't want to take money out of anybody's pocket, but you charge me with being effective and efficient with the resource I have, and we're not doing that right now. I can do better if I replace some of that overtime that officers are making with non-sworn overtime.
Yes, sir.
And then police officers, again, we had 2 vacancies. Our last academy class started 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago now, and we had 2 vacancies. I terminated an officer Friday. So now we have 3, and so we're working on the next class. The next class should start in February of next year. So we're rocking along. Again, reducing response times, looking at the potential population growth, looking at the development that's going to take place, particularly in the Kaufman County side. This is not including here. It has Ridge Ranch there, but doesn't have the Polo Ridge and the 300 or so residential units that'll be developed there. And so looking at that, on our original 5-year plan that I submitted, again in 2016, I was going to ask for 4 police officer positions this year, and to help offset that. Now, going forward, I've seen different numbers. I've seen 3.2 per household used, and I've seen 2.6 and 2.75. I look at 4.0, 4 people per household. When you start looking at residential, single-family residential units, I think is a fair estimate. So we get 15 to 20,000 more people over the next few years. We're going to need 32 more officers by the time all these developments are fully built out, by 2030 or so. That 3.5% tax cap that we were bestowed upon us by our legislature is going to severely impact our ability to not only stay competitive in pay, but hire these people, stay competitive in pay, and hire people going forward. I recognize that, and it's something that we all will have to deal with, you all and us, as stewards of the public dollars that are coming in. The next thing, the only other budget offer I was going to ask for was about the property room, and it's a personnel issue. We have. I used one of those sergeant positions to move. I moved it over to the school unit so that we would have 2 supervisors. The span of control was just too much to effectively supervise. So they got 19 school resource officers and 2 LETS officers. One sergeant cannot effectively supervise 21 people, all at different sites off-site. So for accountability, I moved the sergeant over there, and lieutenant is overseeing this kind of as one of their additional duties. But in the last 5 years, significant incidents have not happened to us, but in Houston, for example, Harris County, the city of Houston, their crime lab and their storage facility in Dallas, when I was there, we had a big issue with our property room, and it goes to the public trust, people having us to maintain their things safely that we take from them when we arrest them, that we inventory and store, and anything that we recover, as well as drug evidence and firearms and things like that. So I'm going to ask for a property room supervisor, and then to backfill that other position. So I want to add one to the property room, so we'll have a full-time supervisor. I believe that we have a quality candidate inside, so it wouldn't be something that somebody would outside, it'd be a promotional opportunity. But I do believe it will enhance our ability to maintain our public trust and in safeguarding. Down here, if anything keeps me awake at night, it's the money, the guns, and the drugs and things that we have down there. So, yes.
Chief, just a question with that, and would those be sworn officers?
No, it'd be a non-sworn supervisor.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And there's a picture of some of our property room stuff. Our cold storage unit is full, drug paraphernalia unit's full, crime scene is full, and the property room is full. So some of the things we have to keep for retention, for cases, for appeals and things like that. And so there's a constant shuffle of moving that stuff in and out. But everything's nearing capacity. And I'll take any questions that you may have.
Chief, you talk about, the property situation. All that has to be controlled by the police department on site. Is there such thing as off-site property rooms?
There are vendors, yes, sir. There are vendors out there who offer different products and storage and things. I prefer, we're responsible for it. I prefer for us to keep it.
Well,
and I think we do a better job managing
thinking more of
it.
other buildings around the city, things like that, because, there's capacity and then there's capacity. You only have so much room inside of a building.
Yes, sir.
Is that something that we even look at as other, do we need more than just what we have right now in terms of the physical walls and ceiling space?
Well, I think we could fit things into this facility that we have, sir, if we had some full-time people who could just go through the backlog of things and do that. I think we can. I think it's we're not moving things out fast enough. It's because 2 people are just not enough there anymore.
And just curiosity, because we built that building 8-10 years ago, something like that.
10 years ago, yes, sir. 10 years ago this year.
You start wondering, all right, are we already at capacity in 10 years in the property room?
I think we can. I think we can manage there, sir, for some time in the future.
Good.
There may be a time we outgrow, but I think we just do a better job of sifting through those things and just bringing stuff in every day, logging that, and then trying to go back and look at the case files and move property out. I think that's where some full-time personnel, a supervisor there, could help oversee that.
Thank you. Councilman
Yes, sir.
Nicholas?
Thank you, Mayor. So, and I may be saying what you said, I'm just trying to understand it. It looks like you're asking for 4 additional authorized positions to go to 242 in anticipation of the future growth on our southern corridor. Is that right? Kind of pacing yourself over a number of years?
Yes, so when I look at that potential, as I saw 32 officers by 2030, is pacing out 3 or 4 officers a year, or we decide to go one big ask, to the voters or something, but whatever. But yes, sir, I'm trying to anticipate the fact that that growth is coming.
And related to that, and thank you, that's what I was thinking you were saying, I just want to make sure. I know we've discussed it, and there's been various discussions about it, but what about asset placement? I know the term substation, and I'm not saying substation, but asset placement, storefront, anything where the assets might be located in that southern corridor. Thoughts on that?
I've been talking to Chief Kirby, and as they build out, plans to build out a fire station, having some sort of room or facility for us to go to there. My experience with storefronts, they're not very successful unless they're very, very focused with a set mission. For example, we had one in Dallas that was the most successful one we had was one put in a community that was redeveloping, and it had a high concentration of poverty and non-English speakers, and we had a lot of unlicensed drivers coming out of there. So that storefront was created and placed there. It was in the Bishop Arts area, actually. Mm-hmm. And so they developed after-school programs for the kids, English as a second language programs, and driver's license training programs for the adults there to help address all those other things. As soon as that area developed to where the land was more valuable than donating it to the city, it closed down and moved on. And we had several other storefronts that were just a waste of time. It was a place for officers to go, frankly, and just evade work. They could go there and hide out. And it was a place that just didn't function. They weren't serviceable. So just having a place down there, to be quite honest, for the first few years, where they could just go in and use the restroom. because there's really nothing on the 20th corridor right now except that Beltline and 20. Unless you go all the way down, towards, I guess that Helms Trail, there's the little place there. That's Talty and there's Balt Springs. So as we build that place out, having something there, I wouldn't see staffing a facility full-time. I don't believe that it merits that. I think what I want to do with that area is make it a mandatory 2-officer beat, so there's always 2 people down there, and then have a 3rd officer up closer to the Mesquite, traditional Mesquite end of that, the Dallas County side, and so there's 3 officers there, just if they need backup, if they get into something, they have backup close by.
Yeah. Thank you. That was very direct, and I appreciate that. Now, I'm going to switch topics, and just the last question. We've had a recent spike. A spike is an easy word to say for murders, but we've had a tremendous number of murders in the last 2 months to our neighbor to the west in Dallas. Without going into a detailed report, concerns, thoughts, I don't want you to tell us your patrol patterns, but is there any significant reaction or issue with what seems to be a nearly historic number of murders to our neighbor to the west?
Yes, sir. First of all, I'm always concerned when there's somebody that we border that has that kind of issue that we could have a spillover effect. Thus far, I haven't seen any spillover effect at all. All of our, as I mentioned, of our 6 homicides, 3 are family or caregivers involved. There was one where the individual was robbed. He was followed by a coworker. He was targeted by a coworker, and he was robbed and shot in his driveway. There was a drug deal gone bad, and the other was an ongoing dispute between 2 people that spilled over. So of our 6 homicides so far, there's nothing to link them to any of the things going on in Dallas. This is all homegrown issues, so to speak, and we haven't seen anything, gangs or anything like that spilling over here or drugs. That is something we're mindful of. We work with Dallas and Garland. Garland has seen an increase. They're already at 11 murders for the year. I talked to the chief there. He's a friend of mine, and we communicate and we share our canine assets. We cover them, they cover us. So yes, I haven't seen any of those issues yet here, but it's something I'm very aware of, and we're in constant communication about, and we review our data to make sure if we see those trends, we get on it quickly.
That's it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate your presentation so much, and also in seeing, like what you're saying, the Mesquite Index crime rates that continue to go down little by little, and we want to continue to see that. And I believe we're on the right track also with the all the technology, the cameras, everything that we can increase. Just looking over where it talks about citizens believe that opportunities for improvement exist in how quickly police officers respond to emergencies, and you address that. City's effort to prevent crime, and you address that, and the visibility of police in your neighborhood, what we can do to continue to gain the confidence of the citizens that they know that the visibility of police is in the neighborhood. And just coming off of what the Deputy Mayor Pro Tem was mentioning, and I'm over on the south side. And of course, I know you mentioned that those places, storefront places, that they just become a place where they can even just hang out or just use the restroom or whatever. But we have that one shopping center out there in the middle of really not much commercial, except maybe a 7-Eleven on one far end, another 7-Eleven on the other far end. And then we have a lot of activity in that area. And of course, it's closer out there to I-20. And I'm not necessarily saying, because I know you made your comment, but in the comments about storefront, are those storefronts that there are a lot in an area, or I still see that as a storefront out there just all by itself, just a shopping center out there all by itself. Once you go past Pioneer and you keep going towards the airport and out there, there's just one shopping center out there, and that's it. And I keep thinking that can be a good place for visibility. But you're talking about mandatory officers that can be out there. Are you talking about mandatory officers in that area as well?
Yes, sir. What I'm talking about is, first of all, maybe we don't do a good enough job, again, as I mentioned for the other 2, of explaining how we assign folks. We assign officers, so there's 9 beats in the city of Mesquite, and every shift there's somebody assigned to each beat. And so because our shifts overlap, at some point in those shifts, you have more than one officer in each beat. And so, in the priority 1s and 2s, here's one of the things that happens. In priority 1s and 2s, they're pulled from wherever they are. Whoever's available goes to the call. So sometimes they may be working in Creek Crossing, they get called to the west side of the city, or vice versa. They're working Rollingwood Hills or Northridge Estates, and they get a call down there that's a hot caller shooting. They're going to go if they're the ones available. The other priority 3s and things, the reason why those response times go up is we like for each beat is assigned, each officer is assigned to a POP area, problem-oriented policing area. And we hold those calls for those officers to go. So they're assigned to that area, they work that area, they're not as a high priority call, so they go and they handle that so they can develop their relationships with the people. The biggest thing I want to try to do as we move forward is assign officers regularly to the same area so that they get a familiarity. I think that's more important than having a storefront or a physical location for them to go to, is that they develop a familiarity over time. What's happened, especially in patrol, because traditionally people in patrol build some seniority, they want to become a detective, and they move out. And so we have some people who've dedicated their whole careers to patrol, and they're seniors. So the younger folks, they fill in the hole. So they don't get assigned to the same area every day. They get assigned whoever's days off that is, they go cover that day. So that area has an assigned officer. So we have people assigned to every area every day. I don't think people understand that, and that there's not an area going without an officer at all. Every place, every beat gets covered. And so I think we can do a better job of explaining how we do that. That's on me to go out there and communicate that through our meetings, through our crime prevention unit, through our CPA, through all the other outlets that we have, to make sure that folks know that. I think it's more than just having a physical location to go to, like a storefront, an office, or whatever. It's really being out there, stopping and talking to folks, and then having the discretionary time. That's one of the other things about the staffing model, is building into where my goal would be to have 40% of the officers' time available truly discretionary, that they're not on a call from 911, and they're not on the, sometimes we get other assignments, people make requests of you all, you send them to me, I assign people. So that's not a discretionary time for them. They're answering something. We have other things, speeding complaints, and all kinds of different things that take their time that's not truly discretionary. So my goal would be to keep the staffing till we get that discretionary time. Then I can hold them accountable for being in their areas and engaging people in that discretionary time. So that's the ultimate goal.
The ultimate goal, and seeing, and to answer the question about the visibility of those officers out there, is that these would be regular officers that are to specific areas, that's their area. That's
Yes, sir. That is the ultimate goal, is to have the officers assigned to an area, so they know that every day I'm going to be in 5 beat, or I'm going to be in 8 beat, or I'll be in some area, that's going to be consistent. The young folks always get bounced. That's just the way it is. Everything's about seniority. So when the senior person's off, somebody's got to cover that beat. They get assigned to go cover that beat. So,
and I'm all on board with the data and going by data. I'm all on board with that, because we need to continue to train but I'll be glad to help in any way I can in getting the word out with our citizens, with the officers, and helping them to understand about these officers that are out there in that area.
Yes, sir.
Just want to find ways for our citizens to feel confident
Yes,
and
sir.
knowing, and they've been lacking in that. But for them to know there are officers out there. They are out there.
They're there.
And,
Yes, sir.
and just to help them build that confidence in them of knowing that. So thank you, sir, so much.
Yes, sir.
Councilman O'Shea, your thoughts?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your presentation, Chief, and congratulations on continuing to bring the crime rate down year over year, and I really appreciate your efforts. One of the things that I really appreciate, too, is how seriously you took our request of you to look at filling some positions with non-sworn personnel, and I really appreciate you doing that, and you continue to do that on a year-over-year basis. And just when I thought we might not have any other positions to fill, you seem to find one, so I appreciate that. Secondly, I also appreciate the opportunity for young people through the internship program. I think it's very creative, especially the way in which you're staffing it with high school students during the school year and college students during the summers. That's very creative, and I think it will pay dividends for the city in the long term. And then finally, in terms of praise, I really appreciate the use of the technology and the continued deployment of it. And I also like the way you're making it very public. You're seeing badges up on some of these cameras around town. I like the deployment of the message board sign saying that the bait car is in the area. I really appreciate that, and I think that is going to help us get or combat that issue of us not being where folks expect us to be. As we move into Kaufman County, and it's something that I've talked at length in previous budget sessions about, but I'll just remind, because both the Chief, Kirby, and yourself seem to be discussing what we're going to do with assets and folks in those areas. And I'm going to continue to kind of beat the same drum that I've been beating, which is, I think for a short-term solution or a mid-term solution, one of the things that we ought to be doing is sitting down with public safety agencies in Kaufman County and figuring out from a collective standpoint, is there a way in which we can save all of our taxpayers some money by getting creative out there. I don't know what that solution looks like. It's just an idea, but to me it seems as though there's each of us have folks that are going to be out there. Each of us have a role that we have to fulfill out there, but none of us have a role that is going to justify as big an investment as some of the things that we need to make long term. And so what I'd ask is that we start to think creatively, and that goes to the city manager's office too, and sitting down and having a dialogue with some folks on whether or not there's a more creative solution that no one has done before. And that's what I'd just ask you to think about and talk about and mill around about.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Archer.
Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation, Chief, and I'll say the same thing I said to your fire counterpart. I also saw lots of your guys and gals out doing good work during our terrible weather storm recently, so thank you, and to all of them, thank you very much. Right now, with the number of folks that we have been able to hire, and I know a number of them, it takes a while to get them all through field training, et cetera. Do you feel good about where your current minimums are in terms of being sufficient for patrol, or do you think you'll be able to boost that as more get out of training? I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts were on that.
Yes, sir. The last two academy classes, we've had a total of 13 people added to the mix of being able to be at work by themselves. They really can't count on the manpower till they can work by themselves. So had 13. Just this month, by the end of this month, or for sure by the 1st of July, we'll have another class, the last class that graduated of 7 that should be finished with field training. They're staggered times because some are doing better than others. Some get extra remedial training, say it that way. So they get retraded back through. We call it being looped. It's starting back over. So we've had 3 of those. 4 of those 7 are already off training. 3 have been looped for some various reason. They should be finishing between today and the end of July, 1st of July. That should be 7 more. That should be 20 people that can work by themselves and be out there and be assigned and counted towards manpower. Then the group that's in field training now, there's 5 besides those. So there'll be 5 more to come out at some point, probably not till end of August, 1st of September. So I looked at each one of those classes, and then after that, it's going to be to this class that's in right now finished. They just started last week, so they have 25 weeks, 26 weeks to go in the total in the academy. They've been in a week and a half, so they have 24 weeks to go. So they before we see any more after that.
Chief, when you visited with us last time with your quarterly report, we had talked. You had mentioned that you had some concern about some of the either in academy or just recently graduated from academy folks that for whatever reason washed out. You said you were kind of working on getting your mind around what the reasons were. Do you feel like you're in a better place on that now in terms of kind of a feel for that, or why we were having some of those, or?
Well, yes, sir. I've looked at that.
To avoid it in the future is what I mean. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Going forward, yes. I want to do a better job of matching field training officers and recruits. We kind of just whoever comes out there. And some recruits, like any other individual, they have strengths and weaknesses, and I want to pair them with their weaknesses with somebody who's strong in that area who can bring them up, not just wantonly assign them to whoever's up next. And I think we can do a better job pairing up those, and I think that'll help us So to fix those, to correct those deficiencies early, so they don't get stuck at the end of their training cycle and not making it, and then we end up washing them out. That's who washes out. When I look, everything that we do, I look at a core process analysis, try to break it down at every phase, and that's what I've seen. The biggest thing is, unfortunately, it's impacted on minorities and females at a disproportionate manner. That's what I was concerned about. We've hired a lot of minorities and females, and they wash out in training a disproportionate rate to the other folks. And so I wanted to make sure we didn't have some disparate treatment or issue going on there. And I don't think we do. I think we just do a better job of matching people with their weaknesses to the trainers with their strength that can help them.
Chief, did we, maybe Mr. City Manager, from our last conversation with you at the dais, have we clarified or discussed further what our policy is going to be in terms of if a recruit goes to their training and then quits, in terms of paying back the funds that was invested in them? What's our current policy, and have we talked about what our future policy might be on that?
Our current policy is that if they go to work, since we had our own academy, we changed it. Before that, everybody just had to pay back because we had to pay COG in advance for that person. And whenever they didn't make it, we already paid for them. They had to pay us back. When we had our own academy, we had a system in place that if they just quit, then they don't have to pay back. But if they go to work for another agency within 2 years, because your license is 2 years, is good for 2 years. If you pass TCO and you go to work for somebody else, then you had to pay us back. I think we've only had one person pay back, because some of the folks who quit or didn't make it were in the middle of the academy, so that we hadn't tested them, we hadn't paid for their license, and they were not going to make it in law enforcement. So we didn't make them pay it back because there was nothing that they benefited from our training. So what I'm aware of, we've only had one person that we've had who got their training and decided to go back home. I think it was to Michigan, and so he was certified here, and he was going to use that at a place up there, so he had to pay us back.
Chief, with regards to gunshots and heavy fireworks, you and I, and we all know that every year there's going to be some gunshots, there's going to be some fireworks, but in terms of the heavier issues with that, and you and I spent an evening one night a couple of years ago on the 4th of July, how do you feel overall like that's going with it, especially on those holidays, New Year's Eve and 4th of July, and then the number of days afterwards where there's still that kind of lingering effect? How do you feel like that's been going for us overall?
Based on the data, we started looking at y'all's direction in the council's direction in 2017. We went back to 2016 to 17, and then from 17 to 18. And then this last New Year's Eve, we saw a reduction in the number of calls that came in. And I was out there that night, and I noticed a difference, just a visible difference. There was some, of course, going on, but didn't seem to be as many, and we certainly had a reduction in calls. As far as percentage, I couldn't tell you right now what percentage of calls reduction, but I know when I got the report back, there were fewer calls. And so we have the data from 17 and 18, and we're going to look at where we deploy. We're getting ready to deploy for the 4th of July this year, and I'm going to measure that to see if there's a continued downward trend in that, or if that was an anomaly back on the New Year's Eve. Is what we're doing, is it working? Because we spend some money, we spend some overtime hours out there, and we disrupt people's lives. Some people have to come in on their holiday and for the day before and the day after and things like that. So I want to make sure that what we're doing is effective. And so it appears to be preliminary results, but I know how these things go. You can have just an anomaly at one time. I would say there's a continued downward trend, and then that'll determine what we do going forward. But I want to follow through with the same type of operation this 4th of July as we had the last two 4th of Julys.
I'm grateful. Chief, do we have a late night CID shift, or is that on just a call-in basis scenario, or have you and your command staff talked about that or floated that idea around a little bit?
Yes, I have thought about it, but the reality is the CID, right now they come in on callback. Sometimes there's no one, there's no crime occurs, and there's no reason to have them come in.
Sure.
The purpose of one of the biggest tasks that the detectives do is follow up with the victim. And if they're working at night, they're not going to be able to follow up with their victims who are going to be home asleep. I mean, if they get a robbery one night, they usually have to interview the person and talk to them about follow-up if there's a burglary, things like that. So looking at the workload, doing an analysis, the manpower allocation versus the workload, it doesn't make sense to have a late night CID shift right now, and the callback is still the most efficient manner to do that.
Great, I appreciate the feedback. Last question, and this again maybe for Mr. Kahili as well, but it's been a year or two since we discussed this, but have we had any more discussions about grants or possibilities of opportunities that will allow our officers to have a very inexpensive or low cost or even, a no cost home to have more officers living in our neighborhoods with their police cars sitting out front of their homes? I'm just kind of curious if we've had any traction on that.
I'll have to go back and look at that. I know we did some research on a program. I think we ran into either funding issues or something, but I'll have to go back and research that.
Okay. And last, I will echo Councilman Noche's appreciation comment for the work you've done to transition a number of sworn positions into doing real police work and having other folks doing some of those civilian or more clerical type work, et cetera. So thank you so much for the hard work.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Chief's great presentation. We appreciate it very much. We look forward to further talks at budget, and as you've heard around the table, you mentioned one thing. I'll mention the decline in the overall rate, and we show these big graphs. And I think sometimes what happens is it gets lost in translation because we've all looked at social media, which basically they come out and say, I don't believe it, I don't believe it, I don't believe it. But I really think that if you say we had 20 BMVs and this year we've had 15 BMVs, I mean, that's legitimate, as opposed to 36.16 down to 36.15,
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
you might look at some of that maybe actually says this many people got broken in. We do it with murders, but sometimes we don't think about the smaller things, and maybe a way to help. I don't know.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
know it's one of those situations to where, big numbers, sometimes it doesn't seem like it's real, but when you get into the sort of nitty-gritty of it, I think it may help some.
Yes, sir. I'll keep that
Keep it
in
up. We
mind.
look forward to the budget talks, and thank you for talking about the 3.5%.
Yes, sir.
So I appreciate that very much.